Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and I want to take some time to create a little bit longer video to talk about one of the most important things that you need to consider as a leader. You know, with leadership, there are so many different dimensions that are absolutely important. And you've heard me say it before, that leaders are the biggest influence over an organization's success. And I'm talking about leaders at every single level of the organization. So if you really understand how much power and influence a leader has over the profitability and success of an organization, you have to really think about what really is at the core of that. It really is about ethics, and I know I've already made a video on ethics to introduce you to the concept of ethics, but if you really think about what ethics truly is and how much power ethics has over an organization, then you're really going to want to really be thinking about who you are as an individual and making sure that you are in alignment with what people, general people, your stakeholders, your customers, your higher-ups, and everybody that surrounds the organization, both internally and externally, will perceive as ethical. So let's get right into it and talk about the roles and values of ethics at work. You know, it really comes down to values. And values are kind of an interesting thing because we all have different values. As a matter of fact, we could be all raised in the same household, but each of us are shaped by external forces that shape the way that we see the world, which makes us have a little bit different value system. Well, values are deeply related to ethics because ethics is about doing the right thing in the eyes of other people. And if we all have different values, that right thing may become a little bit confusing to other things. And this is where people get a little offended. Because it's like, how dare you do that? If you said that to me, that would offend me. Well, that wouldn't offend me if you said that to me. Or, why did you do that? That just really seems unethical. Well, how could that be unethical? I just did this and this. So there's a lot of different things that affect people's perception that really makes us as humans very, very complex, but makes it a little challenging for leaders to lead right unless they have the right systems in place that helps align people's values so that more ethical actions can occur. Very often values mask hypocrisy, and if people really have got to be doing things on a daily practice in order to make it their own and really be able to understand why it is they do what they do and why holding on to values is so absolutely important. You know, values ultimately shape the way that we do things. And if you have the right values in place, you're motivated to do the right thing. Or if you have the wrong values in place, you probably are doing what could be seen as the wrong thing. So excellent leaders really must truly be authentic, take time to really understand their own value systems. They have to put good intentions into concrete, solid actions that other people can witness all the time. Leaders are evaluated based on their actions. And when people are seen as unethical, that's when the organization gets a little bit weaker. So leaders have got to have the highest ethical standards possible, or it affects the climate and culture, as we've talked about in earlier videos. So if you are a leader, you have to really be aware of some of the red flags. And so I'm going to share a few of the red flags that you should really understand because it will help you clarify and reinforce values. So when members lack understanding about how they should behave in order to meet organizational goals, that's a problem where that needs to be clarified. Different individuals and groups have different valuing systems. So if you're in the same organization, they should have the same value system. Top leaders are sending mixed messages about what's important. Everybody should, again, needs to be on the same page. It's confusing to work when you've got multiple bosses or multiple people that you think you need to be following, but they aren't really in alignment with what really is important. The day-to-day life, as a result, can become disorganized. It's disorganized because you're going every which way. You should have clarity in where you're going, and that's what values do. And members are complaining about the organization. That's one of the biggest signs to me, is when people aren't happy, they're speaking up about it, or they're doing things that are sabotaging their jobs because they're not happy, because it's not in alignment with their values, because there's a lack of clarity. So people really must practice clarity and actions that are help move the organization forward in unity. And that really is the bigger picture, is everybody in the organization, and I kind of use the funnel shape, need to be moving in unison in the same direction, to support their customers ultimately, or to help them continue to sustain. Happy customers bring in other happy customers. Unhappy customers caused by unhappy employees who are creating products or services that are failed, that are not meeting their expectations, is exactly the result of when there's misalignment of values, or people who are doing things that are seen as unethical. They're not falling in alignment with what's expected. So leaders have got to have very clear and sound set of values, especially at the top. Leaders must always adhere to those values. Let's face it, leaders are the ones that are facing challenges, and they're forcing people to change. Well, if you have low levels of trust because they haven't earned that trust, or they're doing things that are diminishing levels of trust, it's harder to change with an organization. That's a psychological thing that we have to recognize. So leaders really must be open to change, help their employees be open to change, and remain true to core values. So you really have to have very, very clear core values. It's one of the things that I like to do when working with clients in industry, is helping top leaders be very, very clear on what their organizations or their team's core values are, and then make sure that they recognize the value of working within those core values in everything they do. If you violate trust because it's a core value, then that's when things really start to break down. IBM has some really amazing core values that are very clarified in everything that they do, and it's something that you and your team and your organization might consider. They talk about respecting the individual, giving the best customer service, performing every job with excellence. And I love the word excellence, because that means not just doing it well, it means doing it really, 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 really well. And when you're doing something really, really, really well, undoubtedly you're bringing other stakeholders to meet those higher levels of performance, which ultimately keeps your customers satisfied in the end, right? Because you're delivering beyond what they're expecting. So that's how values really are absolutely connected with an organization's success. So they really have to have courage in doing the right thing in absolutely everything. Here in the United States, some of the core values that we talk about a lot in organizations are honesty, respect, service, excellence, and integrity. And if you really listen to lectures about leadership or management, you really hear those core themes. Even in producing quality products, if you want quality products or services, you want your people to make sure they're practicing honesty, respect, service, excellence, and integrity. And integrity is about doing the right thing all the time. When people define character, which is related to you acting upon your values, you really are listening to what people are saying. It is important. And you have to recognize that not only are they saying things that are important, but they're taking actions that are important to them. And when you're making a decision, you're also choosing not to do different things. And so those kinds of things clarify who we are. And when we are very, very clear on our values, we could act with courage in doing what we feel is the right thing. People who are unhappy with organizations usually are unhappy because their values do not align with what they're seeing people in their organization are doing. And so sometimes that's why people sabotage their jobs, because they don't have the courage to leave an organization that doesn't feel like the right fit to them. So if you are a leader and you see people not doing what needs to be done in alignment with organizational values, take time to bring people in and talk to them, find out what's going on, help them understand why certain actions are important, and help them really to see if this is a good fit for them. Because sometimes it just takes a paradigm shift for people to go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that that's what I was doing, or I see what the value is, that I'm going to make that important. So it really is important to help people understand what they're not doing right, and help them, bring them into doing the right thing at the right time. That integrity and being ethical thing. So leaders really have to recognize that their organizations will always have ambiguity, uncertainty, and a little bit of danger. That's one of the things that happens because organizations are always needing to change. And leaders must always be taking the right actions with integrity and alignment with organizational values, and bringing people back into those organizational values when they start to shift away. Leaders really have to be very, very courageous in the way that they say things. And I'm a firm believer of speaking with employees rather than down to employees. We're all fellow humans, and let's face it, you build higher levels of trust when you treat other people with dignity and respect. Talking down to people is disrespectful. Even though you are their boss, you still want to recognize the fact that you need your followers. You need your followers' insights and talents in order to help deliver what needs to be delivered. So you have to really recognize what good looks like, help people really understand what good looks like, and make sure that you're yielding your power in a way that helps maximize what I like to call win-win situations or outcomes for everyone involved. Ultimately, it's about pleasing your stakeholders, your customers. But when your employees really recognize what they're doing and how it affects the end products in your organization, doing a good job as a leader. Niccolo Machiavelli talked a lot about leader. He had lots of themes in his writing about leader, and he recognized that the best individuals adapt to market forces and become masters at manipulating relationships. And that's about changing yourself so that you can be understood. He also recognized that flattery, deceit, and murder, in his case, was necessary to win and retain power. Is that a philosophy that you have? And I'm not saying that you're a murderer, but are you doing things that sabotage people to get your way? If you are being Machiavellian, people probably aren't very happy ultimately, because people really want to feel like they're part of a winning team. And if you've got a loser that's sabotaging their team out of selfishness, then that's when things really start to break down. So you can justify things by saying, well, the means of doing this ultimately will result of manipulating people, of deceiving people, will get me the results. Well, that's always going to come back around, and in the longer run, lower levels of productivity, and also increase employee turnover. You want to keep the talent of your organization happy and aligned with core values, but if you're being manipulative and deceitful, you're probably a really crappy leader. Write that down. So do things with personal integrity. One of the wisest philosophers of all time is, you probably heard of him, Friedrich Nietzsche. And he believed that humans have independent judgment and truly want to do the highest good, generally speaking. And individuals should be independent in their thought and have strong convictions. And we as leaders really should have moral virtue, which includes wisdom, justice, courage, and similar types of ideals in all situations, regardless of loss or gain. Frenchman Jean-Jacques Rousseau wrote that nature in essence is good, ergo so are human beings. And to achieve the highest good, one must strive to be purely natural, and corruption comes only with civilization. And so we have got to be very, very clear on who we are as individuals and be authentic and natural. We talk a lot about authenticity in leadership, and when you are being authentic, and it works for the organizations because you're in alignment with organizational goals. You really are very clear on where your organization is going, what's important to your organization, and every action that you're doing is in alignment with that. So leaders really have to recognize that sometimes we create situations where we want to create pleasure and avoid pain, and that keeps us from acting outside of what is in alignment with who we are or in alignment with the organization. So ultimately, we need to be doing the right thing for the right reason. We talk about pragmatism. We talk about what is true must be based on evidence and philosophical beliefs that should be evaluated in terms of the role they play in solving life's problems. Is it good for the organization? Is it good for us as individuals? If it is, how can you align systems so that things can constantly give the right results? Kant is one of those people, Immanuel Kant is one of those people that we talk a lot about when we talk about ethics. And essentially, Kant believes that talks about duty and right action. People must choose the obligations that become their own duties. And it's kind of a natural phenomenon that takes place. And people must be responsible for their own actions. And a person with character will choose duty to be conscious and will not succumb to other outside desires. So honesty and leadership really are at the core of being ethical. You always do the right thing for the right reasons. Bible talks about know the truth and it will set you free. I mean, it really is a lot harder on you when you're concealing lots of untruths or you're being dishonest with other people. When you are being true to your own self because you're an honest person, other people will know that. People will want to be around you because you are an honest person. So really being authentic and honest all the time, I think really helps you feel happier and helps you move a lot more freely in an organization. So honesty really is the best policy in everything that you do. It's human to make mistakes. Just own your mistakes if you make them. Try to be able to think before you act really is the best thing. How will this affect stakeholders in the longer run? So we talk a lot about full swing values, and that's a kind of a baseball analogy. And you need a full swing in baseball to get a home run. And you have to ask yourself the right questions to be able to evaluate good from bad. And so the first point with full swing values is you have to really understand your own personal values. You have to really cherish your own values. You have to be able to talk about or declare your own values. And you need to act on your own values. And you need to do it as a habit all the time. So you become your habits. You are your habits as a result. So when you are being in alignment with values that are seen as good, people are perceiving you as a person that's good, especially if it's in alignment with other people's shared values. So this is why leaders must walk their talk and model the highest ethical behaviors at all time. in a field, the highest level of leadership truly must be a full swing at all times. Leaders must be compelled to act in a positive way in doing things that are seemed as positive and good to all stakeholders in the organization. They have to be able to really recognize at all times what that right thing is to do, and then have integrity in doing the right thing all the time. And you don't want to be called on the carpet for not acting with integrity. We could learn a lot from every culture. In African society, the Ubuntu represents a collective of values including harmony, compassion, respect, human dignity, collective unity. What do you think? Are those values that you think could help you as a leader model and help your team to embrace to get better results? In my mind, I think each of those characteristics truly epitomize what needs to happen in every organization. Shared values again. Leaders who are immoral and non-principled, they really are, if you think about human nature, it's harder to forgive those people. They start to lose moral authority, and then levels of trust is diminished, and then as a result, respect is diminished. You can't have a leader in place doing things when they lack that kind of respect. And so you earn respect, and then you maintain respect by doing the right thing, by being ethical, and being ethical in what the organization sees as being right and good. The leader's value determines the rightness and wrongness of what they do. We are only as good as our actions show us. And I talk a lot about the behaviors, attitudes, and values model. Well, your actions ultimately are a reflection of your true values. So that's why you have to really shape your values to be in alignment with goodness, things that are seen as good in the organization, and you absolutely have to be honest and unselfish and dedicated to help other people in your organization, your team members, be successful all the time. And sometimes that means coaching people in a positive, non-threatening way. You know, how we say things affects the results that we get. So values of caring leaders include honesty, consideration, responsibility, persistence, excellence in commitment. Leader behavior influences ultimately the customers, employees, shareholders, and community members. Everybody is looking at the actions of leaders all the time. You have to evaluate your personal values, as I've said before, and your culture in your organization shapes your personal values, shapes everybody's personal values. And so this is why leaders have to recognize how to create an environment where people share values. Ultimately, a person's life allows maximum expression of our personal values, and this is why it really is important to hire people with shared values with the organizations. Different organizations reflect and endorse different values, so leaders really must be doing things that promote shared value systems. So a few points to remember. You might ask yourself about how you are in alignment personally. What about doing things in an organization like having personal value questionnaires that reflect aptitude, personal interest, temperament, or morality? And those kinds of things help align people and recognize how they may not be aligned. It also helps in the hiring practices too. So really having a clear understanding about who you are, and leaders understanding who they have on their team truly is important. The best work rules reflect the ethical ideas of ownership. You know, am I doing what I do? I own this work. That's why I'm doing the best that I can. They need to be reviewed periodically. Ethics need to be very few in number. If you give me too many things that I have to remember, then that's going to get confusing. So boil things down to the simplest of concepts that will help align people to understand what is ethical and right. Make sure that there are ways of clearly stating things and that you're constantly doing things to communicate organizational ethics. And they have to apply to everybody in the organization equally. So people need to feel like they're in a fair and equitable situation. A comprehensive code of ethics should include guidelines that are in alignment with government relations, employee relations, business relations, production, consumer relations, and the community and environmental relations. The characteristics of ethical organization is they're always trying to satisfy all constituencies. You want to build a reputation that people really look up to in a positive light. It has to have people who are dedicated to high and broad purposes, and people need to be committed to learning in order to remain current and responsive to change, because change is always going to happen, as I continue to talk about in these videos. Try to be the best at whatever it is that you do as a leader, and expect those same characteristics of your followers. Doing the right thing all the time really is the right thing, because you're always being watched as a leader. So you could teach people to act in an ethical way by teaching people to ask these 4 questions. Is it the truth? Honesty. Is it fair to all people concerned? Will it build goodwill and better relationships? And will it be beneficial to all people concerned? So it really is important that you teach people to be ethical and you model ethics again. There is a belief that high ethical standards and business success truly are positively related, and we've talked about that over and over again in this video and many videos. People need to see consistency. They need to really strive to stretch and grow to have the highest ethical standards as possible. People have got to believe that ethical commitment is worth it, because it really builds trust. It ultimately builds trust with your customers, and your customers are the biggest asset of your organization, and your next best asset is your employees, who are acting in a way that helps keep customers satisfied. Reputation is a thing in an organization, and relationships are fragile. So you want to build a reputation of integrity that attracts and keeps the best employees. And companies really must role model what society is looking for as a whole. So you as leaders have got to be able to make sure you recognize how your actions affect the perceptions of others, which ultimately affects the reputation of your organization, which ultimately affects the success of your organization, right? So there are costs of ethical misconduct. So you can lose customers and sales. You'll lose employees. You create turnover when you are not acting in ethical ways, or you are not aligning everybody with clear ethical practices. You have people who feel demoralized and they become cynical because of your actions as a leader. And people start to lose ownership. And so if you don't feel like you can take ownership of your actions as an employee, it's probably your boss's fault for not helping clarify those and coaching people along the way. This is why leadership really is vital to the success of every organization. So there are also social and economic costs. It increases operating costs for people to be unethical. It could also increase legal expenses. It creates higher funding costs, and you could lose trust and goodwill with the public. And so it really is absolutely important that everybody be walking the walk and talking the talk about these shared values that aligns people with ethical practices that ultimately will result in positive circumstances all around. So Leaders who believe ethics at work really is about principled leadership, they will adhere to high standards and moral reasoning all the time. Their values will include truth, trust, and respect. People see our values by the way that we act as leaders. So always speak the truth. Do things that will build and not diminish trust. And give people respect in the way that you treat and talk to them. Don't do things that will diminish your reputation, because you're the only one that manages your own reputation. So it's really about our behaviors and being responsible to do the right thing because it is right. Employees should take pride in their company and engage in behaviors that helps uphold the integrity and reputation of your organization. And you as a leader model that. And you do that through creating shared values and communicating those shared values and coaching people to be acting in a way that is in alignment with those values. Organizations need to create ethical climates where it truly ultimately will maximize profits. It will increase trust, and it builds a better quality of life for everybody that are involved. So ask yourself, what type of organization do you respect? What type of organization do you have? And what can you do to influence ethics of your organization? Because as leaders, you must model and reinforce values, establish moral tone and ethical climate, and ultimately you have to attract and reward ethical conduct and business and performance, because this is what's going to help everybody in your organization, inside and out, feel like they want to help create win-win situations throughout. So ethics in the workplace truly are the most important thing that leaders can do to promote success for everyone involved. Sorry about making this such a long video, but as you could probably see, it really is one of the most important topics as it relates to being an effective leader. And that's really what this video series is all about. I hope that you're taking something of value away from this video, and more importantly, I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt.